Hello, hello. Today we are reading Wildwood, written by Colin Melly, with illustrations by Carson Ellis. We are going to try to read one chapter a day, so hopefully we will be done with this book in about 21 days. But for now, we're going to start with Part 1, Chapter 1, A Murder of Crows. How 5 crows managed to lift a 20-pound baby boy into the air was beyond Prue, but that was certainly the least of her worries. In fact, if she were to list her worries right then and there, as she sat spellbound on the park bench and watched her little brother Mac carried aloft in the talons of these 5 black crows, puzzled out just how this feat was being done, would likely come in dead last. First on the list, her baby brother. Her responsibility was being abducted by birds. A close second, what did they plan on doing with him? And it had been such a nice day. True, it had been a little gray when Prue woke up in the morning, but what September day in Portland wasn't. She had drawn up the blinds in her bedroom and had paused for a moment, taking in the sight of the tree branches outside her window frame as they were by a sky of dusty white gray. It was Saturday, and the smell of coffee and breakfast was drifting up from downstairs. Her parents would be in their normal Saturday position, Dad with his nose in the paper, occasionally hefting a lukewarm mug of coffee to his lips, Mom peering through tortoiseshell biscuit as the woolly mass of a knitting project of unknown determination. Her brother, all of 1 year old, would be sitting in his high chair, exploring the farthest frontier of unterrible babble. Do's, sure enough. Her vision was proven correct. When she came downstairs to the nook of the kitchen, her father mumbled a greeting. Her mother's eyes smiled from above her glasses, and her brother shrieked pooh. True made herself a bowl of granola. I've got bacon on, darling, said her mother, returning her attention to the amobia of yarn in her hands. Was it a sweater? A tea cozy? A noose? Mother, Prue had said, now pouring rice milk over her cereal, I told you, I'm a vegetarian. Orego, no bacon. She had read that word orego in a novel she'd been reading. That was the first time she had used it. She wasn't sure if she'd used it right, but it felt good. She sat down at the kitchen table and winked at Mac. Her father briefly peered over the top of his paper to give her a smile. What's on the docket today? Said her father. Remember you're watching Mac. I don't know, Prue responded. Figured we'd hang around somewhere. Rough up some old ladies. Maybe stick up a hardware store. Pawn the loot. Beats going to a craft fair. Her father snorted. Don't forget to drop off the library books. They're in the basket by the front door, said her mother, knitting needles clacking. We should be back for dinner, but you know how long these things can run. Gotcha, said Prue. Max shouted, Pooh! Wildly brandished a spoon and sneezed. And we think your brother might have a cold, said her father, so make sure he's bundled up, whatever you do. The crows lifted her brother higher into the overcast sky, and suddenly Prue enumerated another worry. But he might have a cold. That had been their morning, truly an unremarkable one. Prue finished her granola, skimmed the comics, helped her dad ink in a few gimmies in his crossword puzzle, and was off to hook up the red radio flyer wagon to the back of her single-speed bicycle. An even coat of gray remained in the sky, but it didn't seem to threaten rain, so Prue stuffed Mac into a lined corduroy jumper, wrapped him in a stratum of quilted chintz, and placed him still babbling, into the wagon. She loosed one arm from his cocoon of clothing and handed him his favorite toy, a wooden snake. He shook it appreciatively. Prue slipped her black flats into the toe clips and pedaled the bike into motion. The wagon bounced noisily behind her, Mac shrieking happily with every jolt. They tore through the neighborhood of tidy clapboard houses, Prue nearly upsetting Mac's wagon with every herbal curb and missed brain puddle. The bike tires gave a satisfying shh as they carved the wet pavement. The morning flew by, giving way to a warm afternoon. After several random errands, a pair of Levi's, not quite the right color, needed returning. The recent arrival bin at Vinyl Resting Place required perusing. A plate of veggie tostadas was messily shared at the taqueria. She found herself whiling time outside the coffee shop on the main street while Mac quietly napped in the red wagon. She sipped steamed milk and watched through the window as the cafe's employees awkwardly installed a second-hand elk head trophy on the wall. Traffic hummed on Lombard Street, the first instruction of the neighborhood's pilot rush hour. A few passbyers cooed at the sleeping baby in the wagon, and Prue flashed them a sarcastic smile, a little annoyed to be someone's picture of sibling camaraderie. She doodled mindlessly in her sketchbook, the leaf-clogged gutted drain in front of the cafe, a heavy sketch of Mac's quiet face with extra attention paid to the little dribble of snot emerging from his left nostril. The afternoon began to fade. Mac, walking, shook her from her trance. "Right," she said, putting her brother on her knee while he rubbed the sleep from his eyes. "Let's keep moving. Library?" Mac pouted, uncomprehending. "Library it is," said Prue. She skidded to a hall in front of the St. Jonas Branch Library and vaulted from her bike seat. "Don't go anywhere," she said to Mac as she grabbed the short stack of books from the wagon. She jogged into the foyer and stood before the book return slot. Shuffling the book in her hand, she stopped at one, the Ghibli Guide to Birds, and sighed. She had it for nearly 3 months now, bravely overdue notices and threatening notes from the librarians before she finally consented to returning it. Prue mournfully slipped through the pages of the book. She spent hours copying the beautiful illustrations of the birds into her sketchbook, whispering their fantastic, exotic names like Quiet Incantation, the Western Tanager, the Whippoorwill, Vox Swift. The names conjured the images of lofty climbs and fairway places of quiet prairie dawns and misty treetop arise. Her gaze drifted from the book to the darkness of the return slot and back. She once muttered, "Oh well," and shoved the book into the opening of her pea coat. She would brave the librarian's wrath for 1 more week. Outside, an old woman had stopped in front of the wagon and was busy searching around for its owner. Her brow furrowed. Mac was contentedly chewing on the head of his wooden snake. Prue rolled her eyes, took a deep breath, and threw open the doors of the library. When the woman saw Prue, she began to wave a knobby finger in her direction, stammering, "Excuse me, miss. This is very unsafe. To leave a child alone? Do his parents know how he's being cared for?" "What, him?" asked Prue, as she climbed back on the bike. "Poor thing doesn't have parents. I found him in the free book pile." She smiled widely and pushed the bike away from the curb back onto the street. The playground was empty when they arrived, and Prue unrolled Mac from his swaddle and set him alongside unhitched radio flyer. He was just beginning to walk and relish the opportunity to practice his balance. He gargled and smiled and carefully waddled beside the wagon, pushing it slowly across the playground's asphalt. "Knock yourself out," said Prue, and she pulled the copy of the Sibley Guide to Birds from her coat, opening it to a dog-eared page about meadowlarks. The shadows against the blacktop were growing longer as the late afternoon gave way to early evening. That was when she first noticed the crows. At first, they were just a few, wheeling in concentric circles against the overcast sky. They caught Prue's attention, darting about in her furfy, and she glanced up at them. Corvus branchimus, she'd just been reading about them in the night before. Even from a distance, Prue was astonished by the size and the power of their every wing stroke. A few more flew into the ground, and there were now several wheeling and diving about the quiet playground. A flock, thought Prue. A swarm. She flipped through the pages of Sibley to the back, where there was an index of Fankifil terms for the grouping of birds, a sedge of herons, a fall of woodcock, and a murder of crows. She shivered, looking back up. She was starting to see that this murder of crows had grown considerably. There were now dozens of birds, each of the blackest pitch, piercing cold empty holes in the winding sky. She looked over at Mac. He was now yards away, blithely toddling along the blacktop. She felt unnerved. "Hey, Mac," she called. "Where are you going?" There was a sudden rush of wind, and she looked up in the sky and was worried to see that the group of crows had grown 20-fold. The individual birds were now indiscernible from the mass, and the murder collocated into a single, convulsive shape, blotting out the flat light of the afternoon sun. The shape swung and blowed in the air, and the noise of their beating wings and screeching cries became almost deafening. Prue cast about, seeing if anyone else was witnessing this bizarre event, but she was terrified to find that she was all alone, and then the crows dove. Their cry became a single unified scream as the cloud of crows fainted skyward before diving at a ferocious speed toward her baby brother. Mac gave a terrific squeal as the first crow reached him, snagging the hood of his jumper. In a quick flourish of a talon, a second look hold of a sleeve, a third grabbed the shoulder, a fourth, a fifth touched down until the swarm surrounded and obscured the view of his body in a sea of flashing feathery blackness, and then with seemingly perfect ease Mac was lifted from the ground into the air. Prue was paralyzed with shock and disbelief. How were they doing this? She found that her legs felt like they were made of cement, her mouth empty of anything that might draw forth words or sound. Her entire placid, predictable life now seemed to hinge on this one single event. Everything she'd ever felt or believed coming into terrible relief. Nothing her parents had told her, nothing she ever learned in school, could possibly have prepared her for this thing that was happening, or really what was to follow. "Let my brother go." Waking from her reverie, Prue found she was standing on top of the bench, shaking her fist at the crows like an ineffectual comic book bystander, cursing some supervillain for the theft of a purse. The crows were quickly gaining altitude. They now topped the highest branch of the poplars. Mac could barely be seen amid the black winged swarm. Prue jumped down from the bench and grabbed a rock from the pavement. Taking quick aim, she threw the rock as hard as she could, but groaned to see it fall well short of its target. The crows were completely unfazed. They were now all above the tallest tree in the neighborhood and climbing, the highest flyers growing hazy in the low-hanging clouds. The dark mass moved in a almost lazy pattern, stalling in motion before suddenly breaking in one direction and the next. Suddenly, the curtain of their bodies parted, and Prue could see the distant beige shape of Mac, his cord jumper pulled into a grotesque ragdoll shape by the crow's talons. She could see one crow had a claw tangled in the fine down of his hair. Now the swarm seemed to split in two groups. One stayed surrounding the few crows who were carrying Mac, while the others dove away and skirted the tree tops. Suddenly, two of the crows let go of Mac's jumper, and the remaining birds scrambled to keep hold. Prue shrieked as she saw her brothers slip from their claws and plummeted. But before Mac even neared the ground, the second group of crows deftly flew, and he was caught, lost again into the cloud of squawking birds. The two groups retired, wheeled in the air once more, and suddenly violently shot westward, away from the playground. Determined to do something, Prue dashed to her bike, jumped on, and gave pursuit. Uncumbered by Mac's red wagon, the bike quickly gained speed, and Prue darted out into the street. Two cars skidded to the top in front of her as she crossed the intersection in front of the library. Somebody yelled, "Watch it," from the sidewalk. Prue did not dare take her eyes off the spinning crows in the distance. Her legs a blue blur over the pedals. Prue blew the stop sign at Richmond and Ivanhoe, inciting an angered holler from a bystander. She then skidded through the turn southernward on a Willimeter. The crows, unhampered by the neighborhood's grid of houses, lawns and streets and stoplights, made quick time over the landscape, and Prue commended her legs to pedal faster to keep pace. In the chase, she could swear that the crows were toying with her, cutting back towards her, diving low and skirting the roofs of the houses, only to carve a great arc and, with a push of speed, dart back to the west. In these moments, Prue could catch a glimpse of her captive brother, swinging in the clutches of his captors, and then he would disappear again, lost in the whirlwind of feathers. "I'm coming for you, Mac," she yelled, tears streaming down Prue's cheeks, but she couldn't tell if she cried then or if they were a product of the cold fall air that whipped at her face as she rode. Her heart was beating madly in her chest, but her emotions were stayed. She still couldn't quite believe that this was all happening. Her only thought was to retrieve her brother. She swore that she would never let him out of her sight again. The air was alive with car horns and Prue zigzagging through the steady traffic of St. John's. A garbage truck executed a slow traffic-stalling U-turn in the middle of Willimeter Street, blocking the road, and Prue was forced to hop the curb and barrel down the sidewalk. A group of pedestrians screamed and dove out of her way. Sorry, Prue shouted. In an angular motion, the crows doubled back, causing Prue to lay on the brakes and then dove low in an almost single file and flew straight towards her. She screamed and ducked as the crows flew over her head, their feathers nicking her scalp. She heard a distant gurgle and a call, "Pooh!" from Mac as they passed, and he was gone again, the crows back on their journey westward. Prue pedaled the bike to speed, and Bunny hopped the wheels of the bike back onto the black pavement of the street, grimacing as she absorbed the bump with her arms. Seeing an opportunity, she took a hard right onto a side street that would through a new development of identically whitewashed duplexes. The ground began to gently slope, and she was gathering speed, the bike clattering and shaking beneath her, and then suddenly the street came to an abrupt end. She had arrived at the bluff. Here at the eastern side of the Wilmeter River was a natural border between the tight-knit community of St. John's and the river bank, a 3-mile length of cliff simply called the bluff. Prue let out a cry and jammed on the brakes, nearly sending herself vaulting the handlebars and over the edge. The crows had cleared the precipice and were funneling skyward like a shriveling black twisted cloud, framed by the rising smoke from the many smelters and smokestacks of the industrial wastes, a veritable no-man's land on the other side of the river, long ago claimed by the local industrial barons and transformed into a forbidden landscape of smoke and steel. Just beyond the waste through the haze lay a rolling expanse of deeply forested hills, stretching out as far as the eye could see. The color drained from Prue's face. "No," she whispered. In the flash of an instant, and without a sound, the funnel of crows creased the far side of the river and disappeared in a long, thin column into the darkness of these woods. Her brother had been taken into the impassable wilderness. And that is it for today, guys. We have just read chapter 1 of Wildwood, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Have a lovely, lovely night or day or evening, whatever time it is for you, and goodbye.